Right, so guys, welcome to Care Smarts 360 on Air, a home care podcast. I'm Dennis Gill, Senior Sales Consultant at Care Smarts. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with trailblazer in the private pay home care arena, Megan Shergill. As the Director of Private Pay Market Development at VNS Health, Megan has dedicated her career to expanding long-time home care options for New Yorkers, offering them choice, quality, and peace of mind through a 130-year strong legacy of service. With over a decade of direct support experience in the autism and deaf communities and a background in special education, Megan brings a blend of empathy, expertise, and passion to her work. She'll guide us today through Home Care 101, comparing CDPAP, traditional home care services, and private caregiver hiring. You don't want to miss her invaluable advice and her guiding principle. Quoting her, make sure that those that you work for are part of the conversation, not just subjects of the conversation. So, Megan, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction. I am not worthy, or I feel not worthy, but I really
No, no,
appreciate
no,
it.
no, definitely you are. Definitely you are. And you took out the time today. Thank you, first of all, for that also. And for our listeners, so it would be a very educative session. So, and they'll be learning more about this topic from you. Okay, so let's jump on to straight away with our first question for you. So, Megan, what are the key operational challenges agencies face when coordinating CDPAP care compared to traditional services, and how can they streamline those processes?
Well, as many of us already know, CDPAP and traditional home care services are two very different beasts in
Hmm.
regards to client experience, operations, the back end processes, and more than ever, the expectations of the agency. So, with
Hmm.
the recent new restructuring for the CDPAP program, PPL is really the most involved in really the only entity involved in processing the payroll for those caregivers, those personal assistants. So let's start with CDPAP services first. So the challenges for a subcontractor working underneath PPL for CDPAP services, you
Hmm.
have to first and foremost really consider the client experience, the consumer experience with onboarding, but also
Uh-huh.
then that personal assistance, that caregivers experience onboarding, because that's going to make or break your business. Because that's essentially all that subcontractor is responsible for.
Yep.
So you have to make sure to maximize your back end efficiencies and really lean into automation and technologies, but also making sure that your front forward facing team speaking to the clients and the caregivers are really salespeople, right? Because
Hmm.
families still have choices when it comes to subcontractors. So you have to make sure that they all know their book of business and
Yeah.
what makes them different and special. So to maximize profit under these new different structures and margins, it's
Hmm.
really important that they work essentially with a skeleton crew. And in order to do that, you have to have technology on the back end. You have to have templates at your disposal. I also
Uh-huh.
recommend having really robust trainings and onboardings for like new admin staff, because we know in this industry turnover happens with the admin
Yeah.
staff. And uh, of course, with CDPAP, it's not just about onboarding that client, but that caregiver also has to onboard in tandem together with that client. And so, really, what you need to do is maximize your technology to do the mass emailing, mass
Yeah.
texting, mass voicemails to keep
Uh-huh.
those individuals on track with their onboarding and giving them realistic deadlines. Because otherwise, their emotions are heightened as it is. They're not
Okay.
going to finish the onboarding if you don't keep on them, type of thing. So you really have to work
Right.
with those different technologies to
Yeah.
maximize that. So CDPAP is really focused on the onboarding, right? But then with traditional home care services, you have not only the full cycle of life, the closing the sale, the onboarding, the staffing and the scheduling, and
Hmm.
then of course the processing the payroll for the caregivers. It's still very similar in regards to leaning into back-end technologies and back-end softwares that are going to make your team shine and also allow you to work within, the smallest skeleton crew as possible.
Hmm.
And same thing, knowing your pitch, knowing what makes you different, and really having different like lines of support to be prepared for really any operational problem that comes your way, you have to invest in very strong team members who are experts in that
Uh-huh.
role. And I always say, hire people that are smarter than you, or who can like kind of fill in the voids where you can't shine. That
Uh-huh.
I think is the key to success.
Oh, yep. I also learned a new thing for you. When I'm hiring my team, I'll take care of that thing.
Right.
Okay, and what are the biggest challenges in expanding private pay offerings, and what strategies are proving most effective in overcoming them?
I mean, have we seen the New York market? It is competitive.
Hmm.
Competitive.
I've
There
seen
are a
that.
lot of options out there for families, whether it's just, gray market caregivers who are just
Hmm.
trying to sell themselves to be that
Uh-huh.
private caregiver,
Private caregivers,
or
yeah.
a regular home care agency, or even a licensed home care agency. There are some things that you can do to really set yourself up for success and be seen as different compared to some of those bad apples out there. Customer service, first and foremost. If
Yeah.
you don't have that set up well, then what are you even doing in this business, right?
Yeah,
Customer
right,
service,
right, right.
response times, because as I mentioned before, for clients and families navigating short-term or long-term home care services,
Hmm.
emotions are already heightened, right? They're
Okay.
already at a time of crisis and they needed services yesterday. So to be responsive, to be accessible, to be credible, and to have like this great reputation is key. And how do you do that? So with my experience, um, proving yourself as an expert in the industry, and not just talking the talk but walking the walk,
Hmm.
having lived experience through different situations and scenarios for families. Like your beautiful intro mentioned, I actually started my career working direct care with children with developmental disabilities like
Oh,
autism and the deaf
okay.
community.
Autism, deaf community, yeah.
Yes, and so I have this lived experience of, I know exactly what it's like to change adult diapers and
Uh-huh.
to offset, not ideal behaviors and all those things, and working with goals and care plans. So because of that, I have this level of like empathy that allows me to connect with the families that I support, and
Hmm.
I'm sure there's ways that all of us in like a sales or an education role can find commonalities with the families that we support, and that is key to be a differentiator, because you have to be memorable. These
Yeah,
families are these families are shopping around, and if you
yeah,
sound like just
definitely.
another call center rep and you don't have inflection in your voice and you're not pausing to actually hear them tell you their
Hmm.
story, then what are you even doing, like I said, in this
What are we
field?
doing?
But
Yeah,
also,
definitely.
yeah, but also operationally, as much as you can, if the organization can be competitive when it comes to the rates that we offer for the home care services. Of course, we're all working on very thin margins, but to the point that I made before, leaning into technology and back end processes and statements of process, and having all those things very clear allows you to then reduce your overhead, so to speak, to allow you to reduce the rate that you quote people.
Hmm.
And then also having a very robust caregiver pool is
Uh-huh.
optimal, because at the end of the day, you have to staff the case, right? You have to
Uh-huh.
be able to say yes to everything coming your way. So
Yeah.
that means that you have to have a very strong talent acquisition team. You have to be very visible in the community that you serve. Again, you can't just talk the talk. You got to be out there.
Hmm.
So what I like to do is I like to be a part of the community center events. I
Hmm.
love to be asked to be on like expert panels and
Okay.
conferences,
Okay.
um, because it's in the community that I serve where I hear of the problems that people are facing, and
Hmm.
then by just my character, I'm a problem solver. Like
Oh, okay.
I'm like a bulldog. Once I get my teeth into that problem, I won't let
Uh-huh.
go until we
Oh,
solve it.
oh, pretty sharp on that part.
Yeah.
And just continuing with this question only, that what's the difference between hiring a caregiver privately versus through a licensed home care agency?
Sure. So, I mean, again, I have lived experience when it comes to like hiring a caregiver privately. We
Hmm.
actually did that for my grandmother when she was diagnosed with dementia many, many years ago, where we did a word of mouth. We found a private hire, and that person acted as a live-in caregiver for my grandmother. And there's
Okay.
certainly pros to that, because you can develop a rapport with that person, and they feel like a part of your family. But again, from my lived experience, at some point that caregiver starts asking for more and more money, and you
Yeah.
don't have like this mediator or like the supervisor or this case manager in between the negotiations, or if that person called out or is not flexible with the schedule that's needed, that's a
Hmm.
challenge. So
Yeah.
when you're working with a home care agency, or specifically a licensed home care agency that's governed by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, there's a certain level of care and like standards that you have to hit, this bar,
Hmm.
this threshold. So you have, when you're working with a licensed home care agency, you have this whole interdisciplinary team,
Uh-huh.
starting with the educator, potentially someone like myself who educates the
Yeah.
families with all their different service offerings and all their different
Hmm.
options, and then
Hmm.
helps them navigate the right pathway for their purpose.
Okay.
And then you have, of course, the HHE supervisor, or that scheduling coordinator who
Got it.
schedules that home health aide, but again acts as a supervisor for any not ideal behavior, like if that caregiver's on her phone or showing up
Hmm.
late. And also that scheduling coordinator can also send a replacement if needed, or just restaff permanently if needed.
Yeah.
And then of course we have our field nurse supervisor who develops the care plan, which is
Hmm.
essentially a how-to guide so that everyone's on the same page of what the expectations are for that caregiver and that client working within that home. And that's something that you're not going to get when you hire privately, like under gray
Private.
market. Right?
Yeah.
Who's developing that care plan? Maybe the client, maybe the
Nobody.
family, but who's keeping them accountable? you
Yeah.
know?
There's no
Uh,
track of that. There's no track of that. Yeah.
Exactly. And then lastly, of course, we would process the payroll, which offsets the burden from the family. And of course, every caregiver under a licensed home care agency has to be trained and certified either as a PCA or an HHA. So
Hmm.
that's another level of peace of mind and reassurance for families that you're not necessarily going to get with a gray market hire.
Yeah. Rightly said. Rightly said. And according to you, what does a robust continuity plan look like when a caregiver cancels or a client's need changes suddenly?
Well, essentially, you have to have a very robust team behind the scenes that knows exactly what the crisis plan is
Hmm.
when a caregiver calls out last minute.
Yeah.
So if you have the right team set up for success, you have a team member who is responsive, to
Hmm.
that initial phone call, but also adaptable, flexible, and willing to think outside of the box.
Hmm.
Meaning, even if you can't staff that preferred shift, like an 8 to 4, can you at least get someone there for like the prime time when the family or that client really needs the services? Maybe get someone in by noon to work, like noon to 6, something like that. Also leaning into technology like softwares that allow you to not only find the geolocations of available caregivers that are
Hmm.
like immediately available, which, I mean, 10 years ago we didn't have that. So like this is
Yeah.
the time to be in home care, people. So doing like a geolocator to see who's available, and then mass texting, sending out mass voicemails, mass emails, alerting
Hmm.
them, or even if you have different softwares, you can even send them like a ping through like a certain system or an app, letting them know of a case availability. So doing
Yeah.
that, but then also having different lines of services within your business, like VNS Health does, in regards to, we have RNs, we have social workers, we have a whole behavioral health team, like a VA team. So depending on that client's unique situation, if there's like a need that we can't supply, like if God forbid we can't find a caregiver to go in to restaff that shift, we have this whole ecosystem that we can reach out to say, you know what, but this is a veteran. What other supports can we have as like this informal support in place to get them the care that they need today, type of
Yeah.
thing. And also, the educators or like the salespeople, the outreach team that are in the community should really have this whole Rolodex of other support systems in place. Like in regards to like a Meals on Wheels,
Yeah.
or like other different supports, companion level agencies, like
Hmm.
even if they didn't need personal care that day, or like they could just suffice with a companion, I would reach out to someone that can get a companion in there in the home immediately. So it's just really important to have like this outside of the box mentality when you're thinking of solutions.
Uh-huh.
um, I think that's the biggest thing, honestly.
That's the biggest thing. Yeah, because I've been also into this industry for the past 6 years now, as I told you, and I have seen the operational systems change day by day according to the requirements, what they are in the market, like basically specifically for the open shifts that you were talking about, and like finding out a very apt caregiver for every shift, matching the skills and attributes. Yeah, so the systems does help in that part, and the agencies have to be up in there with the systems that are out there in the market.
And it's not enough just to say, "Oh, I tried." Like, no, no, no. Let's get someone there. Like, it's
Yeah,
possible.
yeah, definitely, definitely. And lastly, Megan, your principle is make people part of the conversation. So, what practical steps embed that in assessments, goals, and weekly check-ins?
Yeah, this really stems from having a very client-centric approach, which I admittedly learned when I was working direct care with children with autism and other
Hmm.
developmental disabilities, because a lot of them, you may look at them like initially and gloss over and say like, oh, like what can they really contribute to the conversation? No,
Hmm.
they're there. They know exactly what's going on, and having a diagnosis or a disability like any of those very special individuals could happen to any of us really at any
Yeah.
point in our lives. So I always lead with like a sense of empathy and always thinking of like, what would I want? How would I want to be treated, and when I want to be a part of the conversation. So that starts from the initial education, at least from my perspective, when I'm educating families about all the different lines of support and services that we can offer families.
Hmm.
I make sure to say, you know what, are we able to get that client on the phone as well? Can we
Yeah.
get that client on the Zoom, even if that client is not verbal, just to have that client sit there, because I want to know what are their goals, what are their fears,
Mm.
what brings them joy, but also what brings them anxiety, and how do we alleviate that proactively for the family. And then, of course, once services are set to start, it's important to have them involved in the care planning development,
Mhm.
because they're the ones receiving the care.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, Dennis, but I am not the same Megan that I was 3 or 5 years ago. So it's
Mhm.
really important that as an organization, that we remain determined to checking in with that client and of course the family as well, to see what adaptations we need to make to their journey, to their care plan, to their needs, because either sometimes diseases progress or diagnoses progress.
Mhm.
Sometimes there's improvement. That's the best case scenario. And we
Yeah.
want to make sure that they're always feeling fulfilled no matter what stage of the journey that they're in.
And obviously, if you're seeing any positive changes, it does feel pretty good from inside. Also,
Yeah.
I may not be able to feel that, but I can. You can explain that more. That if anything, if there's a good progress, so obviously you'll be happy from inside.
Oh, I always say when I speak to my friends and my family that I have the best job because I see that immediate, or I receive that immediate gratification because I see, the immediate response of the support that we offer people and how it
Mhm.
changes people's lives.
Great, great, great. Good to hear that. So thank you today, Megan. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us, and it was lovely talking to you. And to our lovely audience today, thank you for tuning in. And until next time, I'm Dennis Gill, signing off. Thank you.